Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donohue and Sonia Mansfield, talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donohue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. We are the podcast that talks about creeps from the past to the present. Today, we have an old-timey, creepy Hollywood tale. We love those stories because they're usually very over the top. It's with people with the riz getting into all kinds of crazy shit.
I can't wait.
It's going to be good. But we're always looking for ideas for the show, for guests. And also, if this is your first time listening, we always end the show with somebody who is not a creep. So we're always looking for suggestions. You could start off by our Facebook group. Now, we have a basic Facebook page, but that's where people go to complain about our language. We rarely check it. Just so y'all know, just to warn you now, especially today with this topic, this is not for kids. This is not going to be an easy show in many aspects. We will use salty language in this program, so just be prepared.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
But we do have a private Facebook group. You type in What a Creep podcast group, and you have to answer a few questions, and then you just come on in, and as long as you don't act like an asshole, it's a nice place to go where we talk about things that are happening in the news, positive things, negative things. We all just get it out there and get through it together, and that's the whole point.
The best group on Facebook.
It certainly is. We're on Twitter at CreepPod because somebody had What a Creep on Twitter for over 10 years and never used it.
Great.
We're on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky at What a Creep Podcast. You type that all out. And we have an old-timey email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, and we have a stack of stickers we're looking to give away before we start a new vendor for stickers, please send us your address, and we will drop them in the mail for you. Sonia.
They're so cute.
Isn't it, though? Sonia, do you want to talk about the website?
Yeah, go to whatacreeppodcast.com, and it's everything you want to know about our podcast, but we're afraid to ask. There are links to all of our past episodes. We have like 20-something seasons in there, and that doesn't mean we've been around for 20 years. It's just our seasons are like 12 episodes. Anyway,
yes,
you can go in and click into each of those, and it opens up, and you will see all of our show notes because we source everything we do. We're not making any of this stuff up. We want to give people credit. So if you're looking for a deeper dive on any of our creeps, that's a fabulous place to start. We also have a link to our merch shop where you can get t-shirts and tote bags and face masks because the pandemic is still a thing. And even if you have a cold, you should wear a face mask. And there's a link to our Patreon. You want to tell them about that, Margot?
Yes, Patreon. We have our first 8 seasons on our Patreon wall. Plus, Sonia and I put out 2 bonus episodes a month where we talk about creeps in the news and all kinds of stuff. And we decided just to add a little more, to make it a little more special, we will be recording those on video. Yes, we're finally figuring that out.
Us.
After all these years.
Yes.
It was easier than we thought it would be. So those are video ones if you want to help check out the show, support the show. But if there's another way you want to support us, let's say money's tight or you already are a member, but you want more, how can I show more loyalty to the What a Creep podcast? Well, a good place to start is to leave us a review wherever you get your podcast, especially a 5-star review, an Apple Podcast, because we have a lot of shitheads who bother us there, who try to dim our shine. It doesn't work.
They try. It doesn't work.
And I want to say thank you to Megan in Great Britain. Once bitten, twice shy. Great White. We talked about that. Great Britain. Hello, love. Thank you, Megan. She gave us 5 stars, and we really, really appreciate that. All of you that listen to us on Good Pods, all of it on Spotify, all those other places, we completely appreciate it. If you could just leave us a review there, or seriously, just tell a friend about the show. It helps us find our people. We're easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Yes. We're just trying to make the world a little less creepy.
We do our best.
We do.
All right. Sonia, Are you ready
Yeah.
to get into this episode?
Yes, this has been on our list for a long time, and I am very curious about it because the truth is, I don't really know a ton about it. I just know a little bit.
Well, when I was a kid, going back to my life, it's all about, I'm going to be leading the discussion this week. If this is your first time listening, we take turns, by the way.
Yes.
So Sonia talked last week. It was about toxic fandom, a great episode. People really liked
thanks.
that episode.
Oh, good.
When I was a kid, I was a strange kid. Shock. But I just, you ever have an interest that nobody else has at your age and you're just kind of like, why isn't everybody talking about this? I was really into 1920s and the jazz age and just like flappers and Gatsby parties, I guess. I mean, I'm the one that never gets annoyed by them on the Real Housewives
We
show.
totally would have been friends.
Yeah, it was just totally my thing. So for Christmas one year, I asked for like one of those Time Life books on the 20s. And I remember my grandmother saw that there was a Fatty Arbuckle page. And she's like, I don't want you to read this, Margaret. No.
Oh.
And I, of course, read it the first thing as soon as she left the room. I mean, hello.
Yeah.
But this is about the Fatty Arbuckle scandal. It happened in 1921 in San Francisco. Sonia's in San Francisco. I'm here in New York. It was one of the first movie scandals. It shook Hollywood by its core. And by that, I mean, it traveled around the world. This is a story. It's a very intense story. Y'all should just keep this in mind, especially in the last few years since the Me Too movement. There's kind of this Weinstein-esque atmosphere around this. Louis C.K., men in charge, men taking advantage of women who just want to work, and they're in a time where they don't even have the right to vote yet, and they're like, which is mind-boggling.
Well, now we can vote.
It was the
and all of
19th
us-
Amendment, y'all, by the way. It is okay now.
Yes, all the childless cat ladies are going to be taking over the government.
Were you on the call last night? I was.
I was not, but I am going to join the one on Sunday.
That's where I'm going to.
Yep.
Okay. So what do you know about Roscoe Arbuckle, Sonia?
Just, he was a silent movie star, and I know there was a scandal.
In your
That's pretty
city.
much it. Yes, that's pretty much all I know.
Well, he was all that and more. He was a big-time movie star. He had a big party. It was the 18th Amendment. The amendment before the 19th Amendment was the 18th. That's how numbers work. And that was the Prohibition. So
Thank you for that.
I have to tell myself these things sometimes just to keep my head
The
clear.
numbers are numbering.
The numbers, the math is mathing. Okay.
Yes.
But the early parts of the Hollywood system, the movie system, it started off from very innocent roots. It's like, I don't know, if I look at nostalgia, nowadays nostalgia is the mid-90s when the internet started. Like that's become like a whole thing on the internet to look up, like, what did Google look like when it first started? And all of that, and to see what something is now that is so important in our lives. Like, I just can't imagine just not having the internet, not having my phone. Like, it's just
Right. I have to go to Ask Jeeves to ask what Google looks like back in the 90s.
But this was an old time scandal. It has everything. It has assault. It has booze. It has lying politicians. It has scandal. It has all kinds of things. And
Oh, boy.
But we need to also remember that a woman lost her life and a man lost his career. Is it either their fault? Could things have gone better? I say yes. But let's talk about it.
Yes.
The Fatty Arbuckle scandal in the 1920s significantly impacted Hollywood and the career of comedian Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. He was accused of and just SAing and accidentally killing an aspiring actress named Virginia Rappe during a party he hosted. We're not going to get too graphic with the details, but there's no way to talk about this without getting into it. So, take care of yourselves is my point.
Yes.
As you're moving forward. After 3 trials, Arbuckle was acquitted, but his career suffered and he was blacklisted in Hollywood. Rappe's cause of death was never properly explored, and her legacy is that of a victim who was devoured by her craving for adulation and fame. None of this is fair to them, but I have my opinions about other things. The trigger warning mainly is about sexual assault. Just kind of keep yourself, just keep that in mind. Sources, in case y'all are wondering, and you can, when you're wiping on the artwork, you can see this for yourselves if you have your phones, but also go to the website. Smithsonian, The New Yorker, a YouTube channel called Hats Off Entertainment.
Ooh.
BBC News, Thought Company, History.com, Found SF. The book 40 Quarts of Liquor by Dave Zuda. That sounds like fun. The Casual Criminalist. That's also a YouTube channel. Virginia Rappe's Wiki, also Fatty Arbuckle's Wiki. Room 2019 by Greg Merritt. I just started that one. You must remember this. There was a Fatty Arbuckle special from 2018. Yes. I have that link there. Crime Library, People versus Arbuckle, PBS, and The Independent UK. So, did some research on this fucking thing.
Just a bit.
First, I want to start off with just a little bit of film history, because this is where I get my geekiness, because I write about film. So this is my... You feel free to like drift off in your head, Sonia, for a couple of minutes.
Hi.
I'll just...
No, I'm kidding. I love this stuff.
Thomas Edison invented one of the first moving pictures cameras in New Jersey at his office, his home, his workshop. And a couple of men came out to visit him that were from New York City. They were businessmen, and they were looking to get into show business. And at the time, and this is in the late 1800s, it was vaudeville, it was theater. And there was vaudeville, which was the cheap shit that people could afford, and it was traveling acts. And then there was theater, which was more serious, and it was more about the art, and there was a lot of respectability about it. And this was like a thing that was changing, like around when Lincoln was murdered. Spoiler, President Lincoln was...
Spoilers for Manhunt on Apple Plus,
exactly. At that time, John Wilkes Booth and the family Booth, they were considered actors that you respected because they were Shakespearean actors. Mm-hmm. But there was this whole idea of actors where who are these people? they pretend for a living? What's that? And what is their background? Why do they do that for a living? They must be needy and insecure. Sure. But there's all these ideas about creative people and how do you make a living being creative? Like, do you want to get a job where you're in the mills? Do you want to be at a desk all day? Do you want to just raise kids? Like, what do you want to do with your life? Mm-hmm. Some people want to be creative. And theater was created so that people can be on a stage, and it was created so people can sit in an audience and watch people on stage, because some people enjoy that. Motion pictures, when they started out, tended to be about 10 or 15 minutes long. They were shorts nowadays, as we would call them.
Right.
But they would be playing, and it would like be a part of a show. You would have like somebody on stage, like do a comedy act, and then you do a film short, and then somebody come out and do juggling, and then maybe do another film short. But the acting level, the hierarchy was the theater actors, and especially Shakespearean actors, were classy AF, as we would say now, whereas everybody else was kind of like a reality star. And
got it. Okay.
So you were compensated in certain ways, either financially or just how you were treated respect-wise. Show business starts, and actually one of the first theaters is in Brooklyn, and it's Vitagraph Studios. And I don't know if you've ever heard somebody named John Bunny. That's his real name. Mm-mm. He's an Irish-American actor, and he was from Brooklyn. And he was one of the first... Bunny, like Bunny Rabbit. It's an Irish name.
Okay.
He joined Vitagraph Studios in 1910. This is by these men that bought their camera from Thomas Edison and then started Vitagraph. They would go to places like Cuba, like where there was a war going on, and then film some of it, and then also put film shorts on the screen and say, and then people look like, well, that's what must be happening at the Spanish Civil War. That's what was happening at the Lusitania, because this is the video of it. It looks real, but there were actually people, they were creating propaganda in order to project their side of things. So film was a lot of different things. You know, it was part it was part recording real life things, but it was also recording fake stuff that people were turning into stories, and people were just figuring out how to use this thing and how to monetize it. And people really liked it. It's a nice form of entertainment. The lights go out, you're sitting in a nice chair. Usually there's air conditioning. Not a bad day. Yeah. Right. So films started getting longer and longer. Studios started building up. Then studios are building up. You need to hire people. And New York just wasn't as friendly weather-wise as California was. California, you know, because you live in California, and I went to college on the West Coast. It's nice. It's usually around 70 degrees. Doesn't rain that often. It's, you know, it's
especially in Southern California.
And especially the case there. And in Southern California, you have the beaches, you also have cities, you have the mountains, you have desert. You can do a lot of different things in that area. Los Angeles wasn't even really very well built out then. Hollywood wasn't built out. It all happened over time. California went from being like an agricultural economy, and then Southern California especially became entertainment centered. Mm-hmm. Now, John Bunny was this huge star in New York, in Brooklyn, in Vitagraph Studios. He was a very large man, and he was a comedic actor. When he died, he was in 150 movies. He was in show business for 5 years, and he made 150 movies.
Wow.
And he was
they used to crank them out.
They just cranked them out. Yes. And so that was also it. And they didn't have unions or anything yet because people didn't know how to even make things. Like, they're just learning as they're going. And so he was a comedian, and he was so well loved. Like, New York basically shut down when he died. And they have theaters of him all over Brooklyn. But he had that. There's something about the chubby guy, the jovial chubby guy, that we all kind of respond to. And that could be Chris Farley, John Candy, Rerun, Fred Berry. There's all these people, like these
Dom DeLuise,
just men that are very big, but they're also very light on their feet. John Belushi is a good example of that. And John Bunny was like one of the first ones to do that.
Okay.
So when he dies in 1915, they're looking for somebody else to be that. So all of it's moving to the West Coast. And this is where we start with Roscoe Arbuckle. Roscoe Conkling Arbuckle was born March 24th, 1887 in Smith Center, Kansas, right smack dab in the middle of the U.S. Mm-hmm. And Sonia, he was either 13, 14, or 16 pounds at birth.
Damn.
He was a big fucking baby. Like,
I can't even imagine.
13 to 16 pounds. I've read everything.
I don't know how you do that.
I don't know how one does this. His parents were very petite people. He was only 5'8", which is like my height, but he was like almost 300 pounds. So he was really, really big. His parents were really, really small, like very lean, very... and so the father immediately thought the mother was cheating and he was somebody else's kid.
Jesus.
Yeah, they had like 6 kids, by the way. Like, where was she cheating? But he wasn't a great guy, Roscoe's father.
Yeah.
He was abusive. He was not very kind. And they think he named his son Roscoe Conkling for a Republican senator when his dad was a Democrat and hated the Republicans. But he named his son after somebody he hated. Think about that and how that would make you feel about yourself.
That's super weird. Also, I don't know any humans named Roscoe. I know a lot of dogs named Roscoe, just saying. Other than Roscoe
P. Coltrane
on Dukes of Hazzard. I mean, maybe there's a whole bunch of people named Roscoe from the 70s that were inspired by Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Oh.
I don't know.
It's an odd name now that I'm thinking about it.
Name.
Right. Roscoe was big. He was 13 or 16 pounds when he was born. He was never tiny. He was never and think about being a little kid and being that big. It's not.
Yeah.
It's hell.
No, because people are mean.
People
and-
are awful. It
Yeah.
started with his parents and his siblings.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are his siblings all...
Nobody is.
Wow.
He feels.
All right. Yeah.
He stands
othered.
out and othered.
Yeah. Yeah.
The father leaves. He just leaves and goes away. So the mother's trying to raise the family. And Roscoe, who was called Fatty by the kids at school, and that just became his nickname. He kind of did
That
the
is
thing where he
so
embraced
odd.
it.
Yes. He's like,
It's
well,
the
if I
only
take
power
it
he
on-
has.
Yeah. If I take it on and embrace it and make fun of myself before they make fun of me, I'm taking away their power. But it still hurts. It
Yeah.
still hurts.
It's very hurtful. Later on in his career, he takes off really quickly, but like a lot of his interviews, it's like, what did he eat during the interview? And it's usually a lot, but so fucking what? I mean, but that's, it's how people looked at othering another person. And I put a clip in the Facebook group and on TikTok, and I'll put it on Instagram of Fatty, but he was super light on his feet and he did physical comedy. And I think sometimes people think with fat people that they're just lumbering and have no balance. And I know really thin people with like no balance, no coordination. And I've met really heavy people who can run marathons, who can dance all night.
Yeah.
It's
weight has nothing. It is becoming clear now. It's not as clear back then that weight isn't representative of health. You can be a very healthy person and still be heavier.
Yeah.
Like it's possible. Like you could also, and you could be a thin person that is like horribly unhealthy. Like, but yeah, that's a whole other topic. I'm pretty sure we've talked about this in other episodes.
It's one of our things, but his name is Fatty Arbuckle, and he was it was a thing that was mentioned about him all the freaking time, and we'll talk about it when it comes to the crime. Like his size is always it's always just a topic of discussion. If it's not demonized, it's people are at least laughing. They're trying to say they're laughing with him, but he understands.
Right.
So Fatty Roscoe, his mother dies when he's very young, and he has to kind of find hhis way in the world. He locates his father, and Fatty had Roscoe. And that's just his name. I'm sorry if I don't want to offend anyone, but that's his name. He was a singer. That was his stage name. He was a singer on top of all of his gifts, and he apparently had perfect pitch. And he was told over the years, like when recorded music started becoming a thing, you should get into singing. You're better at this than you are at comedy. And he's a really good, my point was that before, he's a very good physical comedian. And he could do a thing like he could flip flapjacks like under his leg, up into the frying pan. He could light a cigarette off a train that like whizzes by. And he does this. And they did this on camera. And Harold Lloyd and all these people like did stunts that you're like, how the hell did they do that? Like, oh no, they just hung him out to do that. Like it's not trickery. Like they really went for it.
Yeah. If y'all haven't seen, like, watch Buster Keaton movies, watch Harold Lloyd movies. They are so amazing in how they are like it's like what we talk about with Jackie Chan, like how he does his own stunts, like, and so much of what you see with Jackie Chan is what someone like Buster Keaton or Harold Lloyd were doing. And like not only are they just hilarious, but they are like athletic. It's
acrobats.
Yes, they're acrobats.
And they're taking their lives
so cool
at risk all the time. And there's no way, like, there's no acting schools, really. There's no film schools for sure. Like, people just show up on these sets and they're like, hey, there's some horses. Here's some fake guns. Just right over there. And here comes a train, by the way. Try not to get hit. I mean, it's a business that's just kind of inventing itself as it goes along and making up the rules. So Fatty starts out on vaudeville. A lot of people start with vaudeville. So they're going on stage, and he does comedy routines, and he sings, and he's doing this on the sly, and he's in Southern California. And he finds out that his dad and his mother died. And he finds out from his father that he's living up in Watsonville, California. Where is Watsonville, Sonia?
It's like Northern California.
It's right by Santa Cruz.
Oh, sorry. I'm mixing it up with Willows.
Yes. No, it's okay.
That's Northern California. My apologies.
Well, it's Northern California.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's way up in the mountains. And in order to get to Watsonville or Santa Cruz, you got to go up Route 17, which is deathly scary. But can you imagine what it was like 100 years ago? Like,
nope.
No way would I do this. Nope. He had a hotel in Watsonville. And he says to his son, I own this hotel. Come up here. I'll give you a job. You could perform for people. And he's like 15, 16 years old. Like, that sounds amazing. He goes up to Watsonville, and his father had left. By the time he got there, his father sold his share and fucking left and didn't tell his son.
That is such a dick.
So
what a fucking dick.
His mother dies. His father has him sell everything to come to this little town in the middle of the mountains that's very hard to get to. And he's like, well, you got to start somewhere. So he does. And he starts to do shows. And turns out celebrities like to go to Santa Cruz and go to the mountains. And they would see him.
Santa Cruz is beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It is gorgeous. It's just a schlep. That's my only problem with Santa Cruz.
Yes.
So he starts to do well there, and then he goes on the vaudeville circuit, and then he's going to Portland, Oregon. He's doing the whole up and down the coast thing. And eventually he meets someone, and her name is Minta Durfee. She is an actress.
Durfee?
Durfee. And he's like 18, 19 when he meets her. They're about the same age. Never dated anybody before. She never dated anybody before. They meet on a train in San Diego. She's an actress with a troupe. He's an actor with a troupe. They kind of hold hands and go on a date. And back then, you're pretty much engaged once you've done that. This is... And they get engaged. And they get married, just a couple of months later.
Wow.
And she's real pretty and tiny. And she says, I wasn't attracted to big men until I met Roscoe. And she's like, he was hilarious. He was so funny and so sweet. He loved to dance. He loved to sing. He loved to just do stuff. He was a fun companion. And so they're happy.
Y'all, you don't need to be a gym bro.
Right.
Way to a woman's heart.
Yes.
Make her laugh.
Make her laugh. Make her feel special.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dancing helps. So we're going into, it's after 1910, and he's starting to act in movies. And by the time John Bunny dies, Roscoe's career starts to skyrocket because there's this market for big performers on film who can do comedy bits. And he's so good that he's instantly making a shitload of money. And within a few years, and he is able to bring on friends like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin into movies. He is their entryway. He brings them they bring him into his film. He brings them into his films, and Harold Lloyd, Mabel Normand. There's all these people that were big stars in the silent era. He's the one that was the big star, and they came to work with him. And he starts directing movies. And at first he tells his wife and his in-laws, I don't really want to do this. I mean, this business is filled with weirdos and nobody knows what's going on with these movies.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed, right. But he's making a lot of money and people love seeing him. So by the time it's around 1920, he's making $1 million a year, which is
that's a shit ton of money.
Back then. Oh my God. We're not even paying
that's
income
by
taxes.
The way,
that's a lot of money now. I wouldn't be upset.
It's a lot of money now. Yeah.
And he's starting to work with other people. He's directing and he's just making so much money. He's buying cars. He has a 20-room mansion. He's known for his parties. He's known for having a good time, like a lot of people in Hollywood at that time.
Yeah. Well, he should invite his dad to those parties and then just pick up and move. How do you like it, asshole?
Now let's go to Virginia really quick.
Okay.
Virginia Rappe, and it's R-A-P-P, like Anthony Rapp from Rent.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia Rappe. Virginia Carolyn Rappe. She was born, Rappe, July 7th, 1891, to a single mother. She never knew her father. She was raised in Chicago, and she was incredibly pretty. Like, just really, 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 really pretty. She's a pretty brunette. And her mother dies when she's 11, and she's sent to live with her grandmother. And her grandmother's really into fashion. And it turns out she sees a lot in Virginia, that Virginia's like, I'm sorry, her first name is Zeline. It's Zellillene. She goes by Virginia because nobody can say Zeline.
Ooh, she is pretty. I'm
She's-
looking her up.
Yeah, look her up on Google. Very, very pretty. And she starts modeling when she's like 15, 16 at the department stores. And she's like working at the checkout and she does their fashion shows. And and photography is like, fashion photography is new at this time.
Mm-hmm.
She starts posing for fashion shows and does her own fashion stories. And she's seriously like, she would nowadays be called an influencer, but she designed her own clothes. And she created her own outfits, and then she would do these shows, like these vaudeville shows, where she was like the fashion girl. She could sing and she could dance. She could do those things okay, but she was really fashionable. And and her big thing was with women, be original. Don't just do shit that everybody else is doing. You would love her. You have your own flavor for things. She designed her own hats that had their own little like intricate things like spider webs for Halloween. During the war,
I would love this.
you would
be all
love
about
her.
this.
She also had a hat that was very popular that was like two doves, and it was to symbolize peace during World War I, like to protect the soldiers. She was very creative, and they sent her all over the world at these like salons, Paris, London. Like, she was modeling, only 5'5", because that industry hadn't been, wrecked yet. So anybody could do that. And she started acting in movies in 1917. And she's like 17, 18 years old. And she starts lying about her age pretty quickly because she realizes like the world thinks that 20-year-old women are old. So she's like constantly like, I'm 15, I'm 16, no, I'm 14, I'm whatever. She moves to Los Angeles. Once again, very pretty, very charming. And she's in movies with like Valentino. She's in these very popular films. And one year she's given the title Best Dressed Girl in Pictures because she was super fashionable. She really had like a lot going
a
for
yearbook thing. Best dressed.
Exactly. She was in 1990, and she's had a few relationships in her life. One of her big loves, she moved to San Francisco for a little while, and they used to have big department stores there.
Yep.
And she was engaged to a man who was a fashion designer named Robert Moskowitz. He was hit by a trolley car in San Francisco and died. So she was going to be his muse, and they were going to create a fashion label together. He dies. So she's like, fuck it.
That's kind of weird.
Right?
The trolley cars aren't like super fast.
It says, let me say, it's not really a trolley car. It's a train. It's like a metro car. So I don't know if it's like a bus or
All
something.
I can think about is like the security guard in Austin Powers where he's like, no, and it's like so far away from him. Like they're not super fast here. Like,
I think it was,
and they're pretty loud. Like they're not going to sneak up on you.
I
but-
bet you they killed somebody. It was some sort of traffic accident. Like there was some sort of like public transportation accident. And Robert dies. And so they've only been together for a few months, and she decides to go to Los Angeles. And she's in these movies, and she starts dating a guy named Henry Lehrman, who's a director and a producer. She's in his movies. He's gaining in popularity. They're living together. Everything's great. And then he decides that he's going to partner with Fatty Arbuckle, and they're going to create a movie studio together. And it doesn't go very well. He has a lot of bills. He spends a lot of money, but he spends more than he has. And he has her move in with him. And he's like, here's a car with a limo driver. Here's some money. Go shopping. Like, she's living the dream life. And he was crazy in love with her. And then he's crazy broke. And he just goes kind of crazy. And they break up. And so it's 1921. Fatty is super successful. He just signs a deal with Paramount Pictures for $3 million a year.
Damn.
I'm sorry, for $1 million a year, which is the equivalent to $15 million in today's money.
Wow.
And you could just, and it's before income taxes and stuff like that. Like he's really like, you could just, I can't imagine.
Gonna be rolling in it.
He's rolling in it, Sonia. And that's why he has all those cars and everything. He's still married to his wife, Minta, but they'd split up by this time. And they've been separated for like 4 or 5 years. And they totally get along. But she's like, I'm going to live in Northern California with my family. You could stay here. Let's just like be nice, but not like be too obvious.
And they never divorced. Because
they did.
Did they? Yeah.
They do get divorced, but they were separated for like a good 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
At this point. And this is, so it's Labor Day weekend in 1921. And Labor Day starts, it's the first Monday in September here in America.
Right.
I don't know if it's a worldwide thing, but it starts in like the 1880s. And it's this whole idea of like respecting labor, respecting workers, having a 5-day work week, having lunches, having, weekends off and vacation time and shit like that. So Labor Day is supposed to...
He should be celebrating his mom on that day, man.
Well,
13-pound baby, that's some serious fucking labor.
I didn't mention, I forgot, his mother died when he was like 11 or 12. Yeah. And as we say, if it's not one thing, it's your mother.
It's your mother.
And she had told him all the time, like, you nearly killed me when I gave birth to you. And supposedly a lot of her physical problems started after that birth.
Damn.
Which I can imagine. You gave birth to a baby. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah. I'm like, he wasn't that big, but he was pretty big. But like pregnancy takes its toll on everybody's body in different ways. And I mean, that's a big baby.
It's a huge baby, and she's a tiny person.
Yeah.
And she's pushing that out of her. Forget it. So Fatty, the Labor Day weekend in 1921, he has a couple of buddies that are like, let's go to San Francisco. Let's get some liquor and have some parties and have some fun. Let's get out of this town.
Let's go out and cut a rug.
Cut a rug. 23 skidoo. Let's do it. And Fatty's like, yeah, that sounds good. We'll drive up there in one of my fancy Mercedes Benzes that are all like blinged out in my color and has a secret compartment for my liquor and all that crap. Mm-hmm. So he's getting the car ready to go up, and he sits on, and he doesn't realize there's a pile of rags that he's sitting on, and the rags have some sort of liquid on them that like burns his ass. He has second degree burns on his butt from these pile of rags that he sits on with his full weight. So he says, I can't drive. I can't go to San Francisco. And they're like, the hell you say? And they get him this donut, like these portable donuts you can sit on, like if you have hemorrhoids or any of those kind of issues. So they're like, mission, that's solved. It's like, okay. So they go up to San Francisco.
Also, look before you sit down, people.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Protect your butt.
Protect your butthole. He goes up to San Francisco, and he and his buddies stay at the San Francisco St. Francis Hotel, which is one of the best hotels in this.
It still exists.
It's still there, right?
Yeah, I think so.
1904, it's built. And as I said, there's the 18th Amendment. There's supposed to be no liquor anywhere. But LOL, this is how the mafia makes money off of this. This is like you create a market, and then all of a sudden you can find liquor if you've got some money. Even if you don't have money, you can find it.
There was bootlegging all over San Francisco. I've seen the underground like tunnels and tracks, how they like shipped things around, and it was all underground, and there was all kinds of speakeasies, and they've tried to like restore them, some of them here. Yeah, like if you want a drink, you're going to get a drink.
People figure shit out.
Yep.
Yeah. And people like to party. That is the truth. People like to unwind.
True dat.
It's a 3-day weekend. It's a beautiful city. You're with a famous guy and your friends that are actors, and
money is no object.
Money is no object. And you've got a famous guy with you, so you can attract really good-looking chicks. Mm-hmm. Everybody that wants to be in motion pictures, you want to be in pictures, you need to be around people who are in pictures. That's it.
I'm going to make you a star.
You're going to be a superstar. So the party is there, and he's going with his two friends, and they are taking over several rooms that are interconnected. And they have that 40 gallons of gin with them, and they have it's a total, they have like a Victrola record player that's playing music. And it's just, the partying is just going on and on. So there's a room where everybody's, having a good time. And then there's certain rooms where people are sleeping or going to the bathroom or whatever. And he calls up this woman named Maud Delmont. And Maud is a woman who is from the LA area. And she's somebody that like sets up powerful men with women.
Okay.
Actresses, showgirls. She provides
madam?
like a madam-ish. She helps provide
madam-ish, madam
company.
Adjacent.
Yes. She helps provide company to men that are just looking for a good time. So Roscoe's people, they call her and say, "Hey, we're going up to San Francisco. You should if you're up there, look us up." So she drives up there with Virginia and another person, and Virginia's kind of going through the dumps at the time. Her career's not really taking off. She can't go back to modeling. She broke up with her fiance. She's just turned 30 that summer.
30, she's washed up.
And
what an old maid.
And she was lying about her age all over the place. But that was, she was kind of like, oh, what do I do now? Do I have to get married? Do I have to like...
She's having a time.
She's having a crisis. So I want to mention something also that happened in 1921. One of her good friends was an actor. Oops, I dialed a number by accident. Oopsie.
Oops.
Okay. Her friend was an actor named Billy Ritchie, and he was from Scotland, born in 1874. And he was a comedian who traveled the world with Charlie Chaplin and Stan Laurel, among other people.
Oh. I don't know.
And he
who
always
this
claimed
is.
that Chaplin stole his routine, The Little Tramp. You and I talked about Charlie Chaplin.
Yes.
In a past episode. So he was in a Lehrman comedy, and they had these ostriches that were used on the set. Once again, people don't know what the fuck they're doing. These ostriches attacked him, like physically, to the point.
Mean.
They're very mean.
Yes.
He was so injured that he was bedridden by this ostrich attack.
Damn.
For 2 years. He develops a stomach cancer in this time and dies. So
Damn.
And he's only like 42. So that was July 6th. Okay. That was her friend and her ex-boyfriend. Like, so she's also like mourning, her friend. So she shows up at this hotel, and apparently, the gin that you could get, that's another problem when you make things illegal, is like people make crazy shit and sell it to you. And it's not like you can go to the Better Business Bureau and say, my cocaine had this in there. Like,
I mean, you could, but you're not going to like what happens next.
no, it's got, yeah, exactly. And this alcohol, like, God knows where people made it, but people just wanted it. So they drank it. And
I love gin. Gin.
Are you a gin person?
I do love gin. I wouldn't like this gin, I suspect, but I do like gin.
A gin and tonic on a summer day. It's pretty fucking spectacular. Yeah. So she's drinking a ton of this gin like everybody else is. And what happens is that she goes into a room to use the restroom. And Maud is in a room with, and then there's Maud. Maud's with somebody. And Maud, by the way, is a bigamist. She married one man and then she married somebody else without divorcing the other guy. So she gets in trouble. So she's going to be a problem.
Ew, why do you want 2 husbands? Gross.
Yuck. So there's all this drinking that's going on. And Virginia goes into a room to use the restroom. And she comes out of the restroom in this hotel room, and it's Fatty, Roscoe. And he had known her for 5 or 6 years. He had been in he was in production with Lehman. Mm-hmm. He had worked with him. He knew her. And she was kind of like, oh, hey, how you doing? And then he apparently says to her, I've been wanting you for a long time. Now you're with me. Like, the moment is here. Mm-hmm. And he's blocking the door.
He's really big.
And he's gigantic.
Yeah.
So
that's intimidating.
It's very intimidating. It's a very scary scene. So she is in the room with him, and it's either 10 minutes or an hour. There's a lot that we don't know. First of all, this is over like a Friday to a Monday. And the partying is happening constantly. And the hotel is like helping them out by sending booze up. People are coming in and out of the rooms. It's like, it's hard to kind of like keep a check on things. And like I said, this alcohol, it could make you really drunk, really wasted, and God knows what's really in it. But at some point, Fatty leaves his room and Virginia's on his bed and she's yelling and screaming in absolute pain. And she's ripping her clothes. And this is her own outfit that she made herself. She's like ripping at the fabrics. So people see her on the bed and she's screaming and she's yelling and she's pulling out her clothes. And they're like, what the fuck is happening? And Maud says, yeah, she does that sometimes when she's drunk. She tended to, like, when she drank this moonshine or whatever, this illegal alcohol, it would make her so crazy that she would take her clothes off and scream. Supposedly. But she's on there on this bed saying that I am in so much pain, I'm dying. So Fatty's like, she's screaming too much, get her out of here. She's driving me crazy. I'm going to throw her out the window. So these guests, and once again, everybody's drunk. Everyone's plastered. So they take her out of the bed and they put her in a bathtub, and then they start trying to pour water on her, and they try to pour ice on her because she's like, her temperature's going up. She's completely freaking out. And finally, somebody says, we need a doctor. The doctors come up, and they're just as drunk and just as useless. Like, they look at her, and the doctor looks at her. Her temperature's out of control. She swears she feels this unbearable pain in her groin area. She doesn't know if it's her stomach or another part of her body, but she's in absolute pain. And I'm somebody who gets UTI sometimes, and it is the most painful thing ever.
It is, but wow, this sounds more than that.
It's more than that. So Roscoe has 3 hotel rooms. He gets another room and he puts her in the room. A doctor comes along and says, the problem is she's just drunk. Once she sobers up, she'll be fine. Just put her in a hotel room and just check on her and make sure she's okay. So she's in a hotel room for several days. This girl thought she was going to San Francisco for the weekend.
Right.
And to just like hang out with friends. Thought she would meet Fatty and say, hey, what are you up to? Because maybe he's got a gig for her. Maybe he has, that's like, once again, that's how these relationships, it's like any kind of business. You need to network. You need to talk to people. Yes. That's essential. She's in this hotel room and they put her in room 20, into another room, 2017. And then at one point, somebody finally is like, it's several days and she's screaming and she's like,
wow.
And so finally somebody says, we need to take her to the hospital. So they take her to a hospital, but it's not a formal like hospital for emergencies. It's more like a place where women go to give birth or women go to get abortions.
Okay.
It's a sanitarium. So she goes to the sanitarium and she dies while she's there. And it's decided that she died from peritonitis, which was caused by a ruptured bladder. That
Oh my gosh.
she had a problem called cystitis. It's chronic urinary tract infections, and alcohol does not help for that. By the way, it actually it aggravates
terrible.
it. So she was 30 years old, and she dies. They find her body. She has bruises all over her body. They do medical exams on her, and they can't find her ever having given birth. They don't think she was sexually assaulted, but they think that there was some kind of force on her bladder. And it's almost like somebody punched her or they threw her against a wall, like very specifically in that part of her body, like something pushed her. So the idea is that she supposedly told Maude and she supposedly told the nurses, Fatty did this to me. She doesn't get into too many details, but she says Fatty did this because she's in so much fucking pain and she's got this horrible liquor in her body and she's like not able to rest and she's like completely scared, I'm sure, and terrified. So
I thought for sure, by the way, this was going to somehow tie to the dirty rags in the car.
No, I just liked that part of the story. Like his ass was burning.
No, I was just like, if his ass was burning and she was feeling like
he can't be on the bed. Yeah. She had to be on top of him.
Right. You're right.
So he's on top of her having sex. If they're having sex.
Well, and he's a very big man, and that would certainly be heavy.
It'd be a lot.
Yeah.
And she wasn't a big girl. She was small.
Right.
She was slender. So,
I mean, this sounds terrible. I mean, I don't know if, maybe men aren't going to be able to relate to this, but any woman who's had a UTI, like, it's really, really painful, even when it's minor, and waiting for the meds to work sucks.
it's like kidney stones.
Yeah, it's the worst. And to feel that times 100 for days at a time sounds absolutely like torture to me.
Well, the doctor said like she needs to go to the bathroom. She needs to urinate. She couldn't urinate. So they cautered her, whatever, to urethra to do that.
Yeah.
But only a little bit of urine came out, even though she was drinking so much alcohol.
Yeah.
So they knew something was happening, like, because her body wasn't processing this. Like, normally you just drink a bunch of water. But yeah, if you have a UTI, every time you pee, it's like so painful. Like it's just,
so
and your body
painful.
reacts against it because right. So
awful.
I know what it's. Yeah, imagine it's then, and you're alone in a room you don't even know. It's not you're in your own bed. You're in like some hotel room, and people
someone can't tell you what's really wrong. Like, this is terrifying.
It's a terrifying idea. It's just awful. So Maude apparently goes to the San Francisco DA is there are already these stories coming out of Hollywood of these orgies and these parties and people are talking about like what is going on, who are these people, it is ruining America because it's the jazz age, by the way. So right after World War I, so we're getting out of the World War. There's, we have prohibition. So then there's people like just looking for reasons to party on the weekends and do it, It's funny because on the one hand, you have to do it on the DL because you don't want the cops to show up. But the other side, you're listening to jazz music and having a great time and getting high. So people are having a good time. But there's this hint of danger to it, which I think just adds completely to it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's like nowadays, if you say to somebody, oh, I had an edible last night, to help me sleep. It's like, oh, okay. Whereas like 10 years ago, it would have been like, ooh.
Right. Well, and that's what it's like when you're a teenager, right?
Right.
Like you're not supposed to be doing these things and it like adds to the fun.
Yeah.
You're being naughty.
Yeah, I've been to parties that by any counts are terrible experiences, but I wasn't supposed to be there and I'm with people that I don't know. So it was like, ooh, like it's sort of
Exactly.
Anyway, Fatty goes back to L.A. Poor Virginia dies in San Francisco. Her former fiance comes back, and he's furious, and he's so upset by what happened. And they're all trying to figure out like what happened to this girl. And the only thing that people can think of is what ruptured her bladder. Like what would cause that? And they're just like, if he was trying to have sex with her, or raping, as we would call it.
Yes.
But he's 250 to 300 pounds. Nobody knows. But it's on top of this woman who's like 110 pounds.
Right.
It's just like, that's probably what did it.
Yeah. I mean, if she was already having health
Issues.
problems. Yeah. Like,
And apparently she had these chronic urinary tract infections. And so they're very tough to treat for some people, and
Yeah.
especially back then. So the San Francisco district attorney is a man named Kelly, and he's like Matthew Brady, and he's very ambitious. He wants to run for governor someday. So he's like, well, I'm gonna put Hollywood on trial, and I'm gonna get justice for this girl, and everyone's gonna be yay. So within a few months, I mean, by November, this happens in September. By November, they have a trial.
damn, that moves fast.
It's super fast. And was going to be tried for murder, but the judge said, you're never going to be able to prove this. Like, it's manslaughter. But you could definitely get him for manslaughter. And I think, yeah, you could probably get him for manslaughter. And Fatty goes on the stand, and there's fans everywhere. And there are people in the galley. There's all kinds of... The San Francisco Examiner, like, they said this is the best thing that happened to San Francisco since the earthquake. Like, because everybody's coming to San Francisco to cover this trial. He was a superstar.
I used to write for the Examiner. I didn't write that story. I would like it clear.
But there's a history in San Francisco. They like their scandals.
They absolutely like their scandals. And I don't know if this is at the time, but was that paper owned by William Randolph Hearst at the time?
It
probably was. And William Randolph Hearst, like, he gets his... He was Rupert Murdoch before Rupert Murdoch. He had his advocacy journalism, you might call it, or yellow journalism, I think is a term they also use. Like,
yeah, there were several wars that he wanted to support.
He would have his pet causes, if you will, and push for. He had an agenda,
right? And and at the time, so this is before radio, even. This is before. Magazines, really. I mean, I guess there are monthly magazines. There are no news weeklies yet. That comes out a little bit later. Daily newspapers were it. And there was a morning edition. There's an evening edition.
Yes.
There's several competing editions in every city. I can only imagine now, but there's like 3 or 4 papers in every market.
Yes.
So that's how, so they're sending all their people to this trial, and you have all kinds of people on the witness stand talking about this party where apparently there was a lot of sex, drugs, and jazz going on.
And it's all involving a really huge star.
A very famous star that they thought, this is the nicest man. Like, Fatty was, we feel about John Candy. Like we feel about Chris Farley. Like they were just silly boys, silly men that made us laugh, but also made us cry. Like they made us feel things. And we don't associate that kind of behavior with somebody like that.
Right.
And so he's on the stand, and so he and Minta get back together. And Minta doesn't want this gravy train to end because she's getting this nice, alimony from him. So she comes up to San Francisco with her mother, and she sits next to him at the trial. He hires a bunch of people. He spends $500,000 on his defense, which is a shitload of money, which San Francisco had $1,200 to fight this. That just tells you the disparity. And Arbuckle goes on the stand, and he completely he handles himself fine. He doesn't, but in the end, it's the jury can't decide. And so it's 10-2. 10 people want to acquit him and 2 people want to lock him up. And one of those is a woman, and her name is Helen Hutchins. And Helen said her husband, I don't know how she got on this jury because her husband's an attorney and he works at the office. So why she made it on there? But women were only allowed on juries a couple years before.
Right.
And so she's basically decided he was guilty as soon as it started. So she wouldn't read any of the new evidence. She wouldn't consider anything. So
Her
then
mind was made up.
her mind was made up. And so then she got the shit edit in the newspapers. Like, she's the reason why this guy got away. Or she, I don't know. She got a lot of negative attention for it. Anyway, so San Francisco is like, all right, we're going to try you again. Helen Hubbard was her name. The second trial happens in January. So it's just a few
Again,
weeks.
super fast.
Super
Damn.
fast. This time he doesn't take the stand. Maude never goes on the stand because they're figuring she's going to get ripped apart in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
The second time they have the trial, it's 10-2 again, but this time it's 10 for guilty and 2 for not guilty.
Wow.
No, it's the opposite. It's the opposite of what was before.
Yes.
So so it's guilty and then 2 not guilty.
So clearly taking the stand the first time around
worked better for
Yes.
him.
Okay.
And the judge says it's expensive to do this again. Like, because once again, the jury couldn't make a verdict, and it's got to be a uniform
It's got to be
verdict.
unanimous.
Got to be unanimous. So they declare a mistrial, and they have a third trial. And this happens right away, once again, in March. This happened all in September, so now it's March, and it's the third time. And now the witnesses are starting to change their story. And they're feeling a bit less like he had anything to do with it. It just seems like he's being steamrolled at this point because they're like, we're going to get a guilty conviction no matter what. So he takes the stand, and then the jury goes to deliberate, and they're gone for literally 5 minutes.
Damn. They just they don't even stop walking. They
came
walk around the
6
table
minutes.
and come right back in.
And it's not only a unanimous not guilty verdict, but they had a statement, and this makes me wonder what the fuck was really going on, because the jury said in the 6 minutes that they left, they come back and say, we feel that a great injustice has been done. We feel that it is our only plain duty to give him this exoneration under the evidence, for there was not the slightest proof adduced to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime, which is true. He was manly throughout the case and told a straightforward story on the witness stand, which we all believed. The happening at the hotel was an unfortunate affair for which Arbuckle, so the evidence shows, was in no way responsible. We wish him success and hope, and that the American people will take the judgment of 14 men and women who have sat listening for 31 days to evidence that Roscoe Arbuckle is entirely innocent and free from all the blame.
They wrote all that in 6 minutes.
In
huh?
6 minutes.
Sure they did.
So no one was paid off. No one was, I don't know.
I'm glad that he was so manly, though.
He was very
Phew.
manly throughout. Whew. He
Doesn't
does.
sound like something that somebody would write about themselves, but that's fine. Sure.
On his way out and to go back to Hollywood, Fatty is confronted by the cops, and they charge him $500 for the Volstead Act, which is, having the alcohol at the party, which is like $9,000 in today's money. He spent $700,000 on his defense.
Wow.
And which is the equivalent of millions nowadays. Right. He had to sell his house and all his cars to pay off his debt. So he comes back to Hollywood. But in the aftermath, a man named William H. Hayes is in Hollywood. And he's like, this is just the beginning.
Oh, here we go.
We have got to clean up this town, and it's going to start with me. And so he sets up a thing called the Motion Pictures Producers and Distributors of America Censor Board. And he's putting out and when he's on trial, this is somebody who usually had 6 or 7 films at a time in movie theaters.
Right.
They all were taken out of the theaters during the trial because they were convinced this guy was terrible. So he comes back to Hollywood, and he has to give up. He almost lost his career, so he has to change his name to William Goodrich, or William B. Goodrich, or Will Be Good. And he starts directing, and he's working behind the scenes. And at first, it's killing him because he really wants to be on camera, But his old friends
Yeah.
like Buster Keaton, they all come back and say, hey, come in here, you just take the gig. And eventually he kind of gets his confidence back.
Yeah. If I want to tell people, if they're interested in learning more about the Hays Code,
Yes.
we did do an episode about the movie rating system.
We did. That's right.
So go back in there and do a little search and you'll find it.
This is one of those cases of like that led to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while for the Hays Code. I mean, they were trying to clean up Hollywood. So it's like, so all of a sudden people had morals clauses in their contract. Like if you get arrested for prostitution,
if you watch pre-code movies, you'll hear that term, pre-code movies. You'll be kind of surprised at because when we think of old movies, we think of them as kind of staged and stilted and very proper and like there's no nudity and there's no bad language and like couples didn't sleep in the same bed and all those things. But you watch some of those pre-code movies and you're like, hubba hubba. Like
they had nudity. They had
Yeah.
sex. They had like everything. And then it was decided like they're just going to, so the Hays Code is enacted and that like kind of goes away in the 60s.
Yeah.
But in the meanwhile, Roscoe is trying to get back into his life. So he starts directing movies again, and he's just back to making reel-to-reel little comedy shorts. And it's just before, it's in the middle of the Depression. It's 1933. He's married for the third time. He and Minta did get divorced in 1925. But because the money train was gone, she needed to find somebody else to fund her. So he remarries, and this is his third wife, Her name is Addie Oakley Dukes McPhail. So she must have been married a few times.
I'm sorry, McPhail?
McPhail. McPhail. That's McPhail,
Okay.
right?
Okay, yeah. All right, McPhail.
It's just Addie Oakley Dukes McPhail, of course.
Of course.
Arbuckle. So she's married to him. He never had kids, by the way. Childless.
Yeah, well, because who wants to have a 13-pound baby? Like,
You know what? You make a good point there. Yeah. No, thank you.
I'm not signing up for that.
No.
Hard pass.
No one's got time for that. So he's in New York with his wife, and he's finally going to he's on camera again. He just started like a year before. It's 1933. They're in New York. It's their first anniversary.
See, everybody, there's no cancel culture. Everything's fine.
It only took 10 years.
Yeah.
And he dies of a heart attack at 46.
46.
And it was the stress of everything and also
Yeah.
and being that heavy probably. And he was an alcoholic and had a lot of issues. So Virginia's former lover never got over her death. He died in 1946 and he was buried next to her at the Hollywood Cemetery. And it's hard to think about nowadays, like when we talk about for years, it was like he was in jail, basically Hollywood jail. Mm-hmm. He couldn't be on camera. He wasn't invited to the parties. Like everyone shunned him.
Right.
And then Minta just outlived fucking everybody. And she lived to 1975. She lived to be almost 100. So
wow.
Anytime there's doing a Fatty Arbuckle story, she's front and center and saying he was railroaded. They robbed him of his career. He did nothing wrong. It was jealous women. It was an overenthusiastic DA. He was totally railroaded and he lost his career. And it's the biggest shame because nobody remembers him. There's no film festivals for him. There's nothing. And whoever lives the longest usually gets to tell the tale.
Right.
She was with him at every single trial. She was with him for 10 years before all this happened. So everybody considered her a good source. But, she had her own prejudices when it came to him.
Right.
You can't help but wonder nowadays, like, just how much power Virginia had and how little she was thought of is like, seriously, for me, it's like, here was this really fascinating woman. Like I said, she would be an influencer nowadays. She would be on TikTok or Instagram and just have her own little fandom and be able to live her life. She was really, I forgot to mention another thing. Sorry. One of the big things that happened during this trial is Fatty, they said to Fatty, you didn't even try to help her. And he said, no, I did. He said that when she was passed out, like he found her in the bathroom, she was vomiting, and then he put her on the bed, and then she ripped her clothes off, and then she just started screaming, and that's when they got the doctor.
Okay.
He said that he tried to calm her down by putting an ice cube on her thigh to cool her down. And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Or on her stomach. But one of the men that went on the stand, I think it was Max Sennett, said, no, that's not where he put the ice cube. And they're like, where did he put the ice cube? And then he said, he put it in her. And they said, well, where did he put it in her? And he said, I won't say, because it's really inappropriate.
Oh.
And he's like, you're on trial. You're under oath. You have to say it. He says, I won't say it out loud. And they said, then can you whisper it to the court reporter? He says,
Oh my
okay.
goodness. So proper.
So he whispers it to the court reporter. And then they say to the court reporter, what did he say? And she said, he said he put the ice cubes in her snatch. Sonia's laughing.
I'm laughing because he wouldn't dare say the word out loud. And I was like, surely he's going to say something like vagina, or like he's going to be very proper about it. And it's like her snatch.
I mean, I wrote that as one of the things that I have to mention.
He didn't even say pussy. Like he said snatch.
He could have
like,
said pussy or vagina,
yeah.
but he said snatch. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not laughing that that's what happened. I'm laughing that that's the word he chose. That's all. That's why I'm laughing. Anyway.
Yeah, her career never really took off. And it's very hard to succeed in show business. We all know this. Like, nobody has a guarantee. But it's just so sad to me that, like, we don't really know what happened in that room. Like, he has his version of what happened, but when you see, they have extra pictures of her when she's in the morgue, and she has several bruises on her body, on her arms, on her legs. Like, I think she was struggling. I think she fought. I think he tried to do something to her, and maybe it hurt, and she screamed, and then she couldn't stop screaming because her bladder was punctured, and that fucking hurts.
Yeah.
But I don't think he went in there with innocent intentions.
Nope, probably not.
I don't think that he has a great explanation for what happened. One of the things he did, like, to me is a big deal, and to some people it's not. But when she walked in, once again, she was very stylish, and she wore her own dress. She had like a skirt and a top that she made herself. She also was wearing a Panama hat, and she had a ribbon around it that matched her outfit. She was very chic. When he left at the bedroom, he was wearing her Panama hat. While she's laying on the bed, screaming, pulling her clothes off, just yelling how much pain she's in. And he's walking around in his pajamas like he's Hugh Hefner, wearing her fucking hat on his head at a jaunty angle.
That's weird.
Which to me is saying, I got her.
Yeah.
That's me
and
saying.
And also, like, not taking what's happening there remotely seriously.
No. But again,
oh, look at me. Oh,
I scored.
Yeah. That's what that says to me.
That's what that says to me too. But we don't know.
Yeah.
And everyone was so fucking wasted on this really cheap booze. This this rock gut, I guess that's what they used to call it. So that's But that's what we're talking about today, Sonia. Yeah. So this is one of the first Hollywood scandals, if not the first really big Hollywood scandal. 1921. Fatty Arbuckle, and R.I.P. to Virginia Rappe.
Good job, my friend. Really good job. I didn't know any of that. So really good. You've mentioned our Not a Creep a few times because at one point they were thinking about making a Fatty Arbuckle movie, and John Candy was interested in starring in it. I think we all know who John Candy is, but let's talk about him. So he was born on Halloween, October 31st, 1950 in Toronto. He grew up in Ontario. He had like a working class Catholic family. Before he got into acting, he was interested in being a professional football player because just like Fatty Arbuckle, like he's a big man. He was a big kid. He was a big man. But he actually like got a knee injury, and so he didn't really pursue that. So he went to college. He was studying journalism for a while, but then he started acting. And in the early 70s, he started doing plays and TV shows in Canada. And then he joined Second City in 1972. And he just became really
Candy.
well known for that. Yes. And then after that, he gets Second City Television, SCTV,
Yep.
which NBC picked up here in 81. And it was a fan favorite. It won some Emmy Awards for writing. And then he takes small parts in big movies. So he does 1941 directed by Steven Spielberg. He is in the Blues Brothers. He does Stripes. He shows up in National Lampoon's Vacation. He appeared on Saturday Night Live twice. Bob Odenkirk, who worked as a writer and a comedian, said that he thinks John Candy was the most burned potential host of SNL and that he was asked many times to host, only for it to be changed at the last minute. That he did appear on the show twice. And then he was approached to play Lewis in Ghostbusters, but he had a different idea of what he wanted that role to be. And so they went with Rick Moranis instead. But he is friends with Rick Moranis. He never had hard feelings. In fact, he's in the music video for Ghostbusters. Like, he was never shitty about it. He was also in Splash.
Which is so, I love Splash.
And then after Splash, which he's so good in, he gets a 3-picture deal with Walt Disney Pictures. And then after that, it's what we all know. It's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, The Great Outdoors, Spaceballs, Cool Runnings. We did an episode on Dorking Out of JFK. He's doing a thing in there. So funny. He's not supposed to be funny. I just think his accent is so funny. He's basically
cock-a-doodle-doo, Jim.
Yeah, he's basically Foghorn Leghorn in the movie. It's really weird. And then, of course, Uncle Buck. By all accounts, everyone loves John Candy. Like, and I have some stories here. So Bill Pullman was in Spaceballs with John Candy, and it was like one of Bill Pullman's like first big movies. And he said that John Candy was always looking out for him, that he like asked him to lunch like immediately, and that they met for lunch practically every day. And he said, I have never forgotten John Candy's generosity. He showed me how to be a gentle leader.
Aww.
He lightened my load. He had my back. Daryl Hannah, who worked with him in Splash, said that she absolutely adored him, that he was just full of heart and he was a kind soul and so hilarious. Catherine O'Hare said that he loved talking to his fans and that he was always super sweet to them. And she said that sometimes they would come up and they would like be doing like a little bit. And she said he would pick up on it and throw something back at them. And he always treated them as equal.
Aww.
Eugene Levy said that like we were very, very close friends and I worked with John more than anyone else, and that he was a lovely man who cared deeply about people. And I mean, he's so good. He's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have such love for John Candy, and like in movies like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, he like just touches your heart, or even something silly like Home Alone, like when he's like riding in the car, the back of the truck with Catherine O'Hara, and he's talking about his family and all the, maybe you've heard of Polka Polka Polka, like all of that. Like he brings just like a little bit of sadness sometimes to movies, to his roles. That even when he's funny, there's like this little bit of sadness. And Martin Short told a story that he said John Candy was always like hilarious and kind, and he was the kind of person who would always pick up the tab. And this is even when they didn't have any money. Like he would do this. Like he couldn't help himself. But he also had his own problems. He was very public about he had severe anxiety and panic attacks. He said that it got to a point where he couldn't even watch his own movies because he would get so critical of himself.
Aw.
And I was like, that makes me so sad.
Yeah.
And he always struggled with like his weight too. Like his father died of a heart attack when John Candy was like 5 or 9, I forget. I'm sorry. And like John Candy knew that these were risks. And when he was younger, he smoked a lot. He drank a lot. He did coke. All those things. And then when John Belushi died, he stopped doing cocaine and things like that. But he did try dieting a lot. He tried exercising with trainers, and like nothing would like work. And so he just always struggled with that. And then he this is so sad. He died in his sleep. He was 43.
Jesus.
43.
It's nothing.
He was in Mexico. He was filming the movie Wagons East. They said he had a heart attack. I think Richard Lewis was in that movie. And Richard Lewis was also like that. He was like the nicest. Like nobody's like, what a dick. Like everyone loved John Candy. He had met his wife in the 70s on a blind date, and they got married. And when he passed, he had 2 children, Jennifer and Chris, and they were 14 and 19.
Oh,
and now I know, so awful. And now they both work in show business. They do like voiceover work, and they like, have appeared in a few things, but they're not like they do smaller stuff. But anyway, he just seemed like a lovely person.
yeah.
And
They both post about him quite a bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love John Candy, so R.I.P. John Candy. That's our not creep.
Aw, that's a good job, Sonia.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of like you said, Chris Farley. There's like a few people that have been bandied about doing the Fatty Arbuckle story. I think it wasn't it on Hacks too, like in this.
Yeah, I think that one it came
Christopher
up in
Lloyd
Hacks, too.
said he was like the son of or the grandson of Fatty Arbuckle.
Yeah,
Fatty didn't have any kids, so it wouldn't have.
Yeah. So I think like John Belushi was all the people you've mentioned, like John Belushi was thrown around, Chris Farley was thrown around, John Candy was thrown around. I think there was even talk one time about Vince Vaughn was going to do it.
Eric Stone Street, do you know who that is?
Yeah.
He's been asked to do, he's been supposedly attached to it. I mean, I think Paramount, it's like a project for them because he was a Paramount star.
Mm-hmm.
I think like, yeah, it would make for a really interesting story, but I'm like, how do you tell it truthfully? And then what's Virginia's part in all that?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
it feels like it could be a series.
It could be like Presumed
limited.
Innocent, seriously, because what really happened?
Yep.
We don't know. And various people in the party said like, oh, we thought something was going on or we had no idea. Anyway. Good job,
I'd watch
Sonia.
it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Thank you, friend.
All right, everybody. So if you like the sound of our voices, and by golly, why wouldn't you?
Right.
We also co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies. What are we going to be dorking out about next, Sonia?
So next, we are going to be talking about 1983's Scarface, and we will also include an interview with Nat
Segaloff.
Thank you. He wrote a book about it. It's called Say Hello to My Little Friend, A Century of Scarface. He's been on our show before when we talked about The Exorcist, so this will be like a really good one. And I'm the movie, they're doing a thing in it, so it's worth talking about for sure. And our episode out right now is about the Kids in the Hall brain candy.
Talk about Canadians.
Talking about Canadians.
All right, so all those places I mentioned at the top of the show, you could send us your suggestions. Our email, once again, is whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. We love it when you use the Annie Potts gift. We got one from Ghostbusters, going back to Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Or you can just be clever and just think of something on your own. Sonia, where can they find you?
You could find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Mastodon, Friendster, whatever. Where can people find you, Margo?
I'm on MySpace. I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick. That is my site. That's where I am for Twitter and also for the TikTok. Oh, no, sorry. That's for Instagram and Threads. On Twitter and TikTok, I'm at Brooklyn Margot. And I do have a clip there of Fatty Arbuckle. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back soon with a new episode. But in the meantime, stay safe, be kind. Just don't be a creep.
Be a creep. Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.